in Cornwall on VE Day, and I just thought it would be a nice opportunity to read a little bit from The Seagate, which comes out in ebook in June and in hardback probably in September. Don't know yet, these are strange times. And I'd like to read a bit because it's for the first time I've written about the Second World War, based on some of my mother's life, some of other members of our family, and so it feels quite a personal book. It works in two parts. Some of it is set during nowadays, and some of it going back in time into the Second World War and the life of the central character, Olivia Kitto. And this is the first Olivia chapter, and it's April 1943. Through the crack between the sitting room door and its wooden jamb, Olivia watched as her parents embraced. Their argument that morning had been severe. Her mother had stormed out into the garden. From her eyrie upstairs, Olivia had heard the shouting and felt the front door slam so hard she could not imagine how the stained glass could survive. She had watched her mother running towards the orchard, her red tea dress a danger flag amongst the tall grass and straggling flowers, her father in pursuit, limping just a bit, remonstrating but being ignored. Olivia had come to accept these eruptions as a normal part of the pattern of their lives. Her parents laughed and caroused and lived life noisily. But every so often something would slip out of kilter and a row would come racketing out. Her mother, almost as tall as her father in her heels, was holding him so tight that her knuckles were white and her varnished nails were almost completely buried in the serge of his jacket. Olivia could tell from the way her shoulders trembled that she was crying, which her mother never did. Tony Kitto said soothingly, "Let's not waste the time we have left in recriminations." Olivia frowned. Recriminations meant someone had done something wrong, but for once it didn't sound as if that someone was her. Her father started towards the door, pulling Estelle with him. "Let's go upstairs and say our farewells properly." Olivia fled, socked feet gliding noiselessly over the beeswaxed tiles. She managed to get as far as the dining room before her parents emerged and started up the stairs. Just another of their rows then, nothing world-shattering. But the words, "the time we have left," skittered through her uneasy mind. She let herself into the kitchen, where the sun poured in through the window to cast a rhombus of light across the newly baked bread. Outside, the gold and orange trumpets of nasturtiums tumbled down the wall in a shocking burst of colour. When Daddy was here, everything seemed brighter and better. Every room in the house felt put to good use, full of light and life and energy. He lit fires on dull days and strewed his belongings through the rooms, his pipe and tobacco pouch alongside a book left split-spined and upside down on the light stand in the snug, a sketchbook and sticks of charcoal on the hall console, the drafts board and its scattered pieces on the table in the dining room where the radiogram played swing band music. When he wasn't home, she and Mummy only ever used the parlour and the kitchen, and Olivia found herself creeping quietly like a trespasser around the rest of the house. Half an hour later, her parents were back downstairs and Daddy was carrying his kit bag. Mummy's eyes were overly bright, but she had reapplied her makeup and looked like a film star. Mrs. Kitto caught sight of her daughter. "Fetch your bathers, Cherie. We'll go for a swim on the way back." That was an unexpected gift. Olivia thudded upstairs to her room, grabbed her knitted navy swimming costume and a towel, and was back in the hall in seconds flat. "There's my girl." Daddy tousled her hair. They walked up the steep path through the wood behind the house to where the old car was kept. Olivia loved to be taken out in the standard Flying 8. It was a majestic vehicle, with its long running boards and sweeping mudguards, and though it was a bit cramped in the back, she felt like Princess Elizabeth being chauffeured around, sometimes practising a regal wave to the villagers and farmhands they passed. Her father drove carefully, letting the road spool out in graceful spans and parabolas, taking the bends gently so that Olivia didn't shoot sideways across the hard leather seat. She hugged his kit bag to her, breathing in the smell that defined him: tobacco, ironed cotton, leather polish, things he would take back with him all the way to North Africa. When he'd come home, he had had to show her where it was in the atlas. Olivia loved his old atlas. Her father hadn't been much younger than she was now when he'd won it. In pencil on the title page was inscribed the rubric: First Prize for Geography to Anthony John Kitto, Bolitho School, Penzance, 5th of June 1917. Imagine, they had both been teenagers during a war. She remembered how he had tracked his finger across the Channel, through France and across the Mediterranean to Tunisia and Algeria, so far away. I can't tell you exactly where I was or what I was doing there. Walls have ears, he said with a grin. Impossible to imagine that a war was going on in the world, a war in which her father had taken a bullet when Cornwall was so peaceful. All too soon, they were pulling up at the station, where passengers were milling about, some in uniform, most in civvies. Olivia watched a gaggle of children emerging in Indian file, wearing belted macks and satchels slung across their chests, being marshalled by a pair of bespectacled women. Evacuees, her father said quietly. His wife firmed her lips, but did not reply. Tony Kitto drew the Flying 8 up outside the station, shut off the engine and got out, then opened the back door, and Olivia passed him his greatcoat and cap and shoved the kit bag along the leather seat, then slid across and jumped out beside him. Haven't you grown? He observed, as if he hadn't really noticed her in all these past weeks. His pale eyes were slitted against the sun, the skin crinkled at the corners. A breeze blew his sandy hair across his face, and he swept it back with an impatient hand, then jammed his cap down over it, in an instant becoming a man in uniform, a soldier, and not Daddy any longer. Olivia felt abruptly bereft. I'll be 16 soon, she said, in an attempt to re-establish their connection. He regarded her solemnly. So you will. Dropping to one knee, he rummaged in his kit bag, coming back up with a sturdy leather pouch, which he held out to Olivia. She took it tentatively and turned it over, taken aback by its weight. On the back she saw the word Leica stamped into the leather. Your camera, she said in awe. By the time I come back, I expect you to have mastered the art of taking and printing a good photograph, he told her. You'll find everything you need, the manuals and books, the printing paper and the chemicals in the back bedroom. Estelle made a face. Don't you think she's too young for such an expensive camera, chérie? Never too young, and why start with something substandard? Besides, she's inherited my artistic eye and should be encouraged, eh, Livy? Olivia hugged the camera case possessively. She wasn't giving it back now. It felt heavy and significant beyond its physical being, symbolic somehow of her passage from childhood into a more grown-up world. I'll treasure it, she promised. Estelle wavered. Are you sure you won't need it? Tony shrugged. I'll pick another one up in London on my way through, he said, as if Leicas were 2 a penny rather than the best German technology you could buy. He touched his wife's cheek. Now, remember, the instructions from the ministry. Everything you need is down in the cellar, so if the Germans come, destroy all the maps and get yourselves down there. Keep the water canisters refreshed, just in case, and if worst comes to worse, you can go down to the tunnel, to the cove, and swim out. Estelle stared at him. Surely the Germans won't invade Cornwall now. I thought you said the tide was turning. Who can read the future? He put a finger to her lips, then kissed her, smearing her lipstick. Olivia looked away, embarrassed. When she looked back, he was striding towards the waiting train. Then the clouds of steam swallowed him up. I'll read another bit tomorrow, but that's from the first Olivia chapter. and gives you some sort of sense of the family setup. And the rest of the book really is about a house of secrets, the old house that the family inhabited, and how a young relative comes down to Cornwall to look after it for Olivia while she's in hospital and finds out all sorts of strange things. Anyway, thank you for listening this long, and I hope you're doing okay in lockdown. These are very strange times, but books are a great refuge and a great escape, so I hope you'll have a go at the Seagate when it comes out, and I'll keep reading bits from it. Thank you.